5 secrets I wish I knew before I started stained glass. Number 1, get yourself a decent glass cutter. I see so many students, and myself included when I started out, scoring the glass and hands shaking and kind of putting lots of pressure on and holding the glass cutter in your fist like this and getting frustrated because glass isn't cutting in the way that you want it. Very often if you're doing a score line, you think, have I scored it hard enough? Do I need to rescore it? And you go over the score again. These are mistakes that everybody makes to start with. Cutting textured glass. You know, if you're cutting textured glass, do I cut it on the textured side or the non-textured side? There's loads of issues to do with cutting glass. The most important thing with glass cutters is to get yourself the right glass cutter. And hands down, the best glass cutter you can buy on the market is a Japanese glass cutter called Toyo, T-O-Y-O. They're absolutely fantastic. They're oil-filled glass cutters. And they're kind of like industry standard for stained glass artists. We're normally cutting glass that's about, well, between 2mm and maybe up to 6mm thick glass. If you're cutting glass that's bigger than 6mm, you really need to go to a specialist glazier for something like that. But stained glass is normally pretty thin, and we can cut it ourselves just using a Toyo glass cutter. Now, there are different types of Toyo glass cutters available. The one I prefer to use is what's called a pencil cutter. It looks a little bit like a pen, and you kind of hold it like a pen and you score the glass. If you're cutting straight lines, you put a straight edge down on the glass and you'll start at the top end of the glass and you'll pull the glass cutter towards you to create a nice scoring sound. This is what the sound sounds like. But if you're cutting a shape, for example, you'll probably be pushing the glass cutter. Why? Because you want to be able to look over the top of the glass cutter and look down at the little wheel that cuts the glass so that you can actually follow the line of your pattern by pushing the glass cutter forward. Now, using a pencil glass cutter is great if you've got hands like mine, but if you've got smaller hands, or if you're not quite as strong, or if you get tired holding the glass cutter and your hand starts to ache, there are lots of different types of glass cutters around. The best glass cutter you can buy is called a pistol grip glass cutter. You hold it in your hand like a pistol. It's really easy to grip, and you can use it in a pushing direction and a pulling direction, and it works really, really well. So what I'd suggest you guys do if you're new to glass cutting is go to a glass cutting shop, or go to your craft shop and hold a variety of different glass cutters. Make sure the Toyo glass cutters, because they really are the best ones on the market, and try the pistol grip one, try the pencil grip one. There's another one which you can hold, which is in the crook of your hand. I'm going to show you little examples here as I'm talking. And these are also good. Get ones that are really comfortable for you to hold, because after a while you're going to be cutting glass for perhaps longer periods of time, and you want it to be comfortable in your hand. So secret number 1, get yourself a decent glass cutter. Secret number 2, running pliers. These are just such a good invention. I was brought up and taught to cut glass using the scoring method and then tapping it underneath. And that's the way I learned at art school many, many moons ago. Tap, 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 tap. And that works really well. You can encourage a glass line along the score, and you can encourage the fracture to continue along the score. But it's not great for everybody. And I see beginners holding the glass in one hand and swinging the glass cutter underneath, really hitting it too hard. You really don't need to use a lot of energy and a lot of force when you're tapping the glass. But running pliers are a great way to avoid all that tapping stress and all that anxiety about whether you're tapping the glass hard enough or soft enough. You hold the running pliers along the score of the glass and you gently squeeze the pliers together, and that creates a run, and it's a really beautiful way of cutting glass. So running pliers are a tremendous thing to get used to. Secret number 3, a glass grinder. They're really, really useful bits of kit. Why? Because you can spend a long time nibbling at a piece of glass, trying to smooth it out. If the glass is maybe cut slightly too large, or the shape isn't exactly what you want, you end up getting a pair of grazing pliers and nibbling at it. That works sometimes, but it doesn't work all the time, and it's really frustrating if you've cut an intricate piece of glass and you're using your grazing pliers, and unfortunately it breaks in a way that you don't want. You end up throwing the glass away and having to cut it again. Soldering irons. Don't be tempted to buy a cheap soldering iron that you see on eBay or Amazon that costs 20 quid or 30 quid thinking it's going to do the job. buy a soldering iron that's designed for stained glass. Weller make a great soldering iron. Buy a 100-watt soldering iron. Don't be tempted to buy the 80-watt ones. They really aren't strong enough. They aren't powerful enough. What ends up happening is the tip on the soldering iron quickly loses its heat and the solder doesn't melt and flow in the way that you want. So a 100-watt soldering iron made by Weller or made by Heiko, again, a Japanese company. They make fantastic soldering irons, and there's a review here on my YouTube channel which is talking specifically about these types of irons. Go have a look at that video after you've seen this video. I'll also leave notes at the end in the comments below this video for everything that I'm talking about today. Getting a decent soldering iron is very, very important. It's a great secret that you need to learn in order to make great stained glass windows. You want to kind of reduce the likelihood that you're going to have to repeat something because you've messed it up. Getting a good soldering iron is one of the key things of that. Being able to control the soldering iron and being able to control the temperature of the soldering iron, again, is a really important part of this whole process. The most powerful secret of all is something that wasn't available for me for about 20 years. It's YouTube, believe it or not. It's what you're looking at now, YouTube. YouTube was invented or created on the 14th of February, Valentine's Day, 2005. That was a full 20 years after I started making stained glass windows back in 1985. And after I went to college, I was basically left to my own devices to kind of develop ways of working. And I was constantly full of anxiety, thinking, am I cutting the glass correctly? Am I soldering correctly? You know, I just didn't really have any forms of reference, any people that I could really talk to, because most of the time I was working on my own. YouTube is an absolutely fantastic resource. The biggest search engine on the planet is Google. And who do Google own? They own YouTube, and YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world. If you've got a question, if you've got a pain point, if you've got a problem that you want solving, type that into YouTube and you'll find a visual demonstration. It is absolutely fantastic. There are so many great content creators out there now producing really good content for you, all about glass cutting, all about using solder or using copper foil, designing stained glass windows, painting stained glass windows. There's lots of great creators out there. I'm going to give a shout out to some of the creators who I recommend you go check out. So you've got Stained Glass DIY. He's a glass artist who sells kits, and there's lots of smaller projects. If you're starting out, Stained Glass DIY is a great guy to subscribe to. He has lots of templates that you can work with. He's a great guy to have a look at, and he produces some fantastic content. Rachel at Sunbear Glasscraft is producing some fantastic tutorials on YouTube, again aimed at beginners, aimed at those who are starting out in the craft. She's really helpful, she's informative, and she's got some great videos all about stained glass making, stained glass designing, stained glass cutting and soldering. She's a great person to talk to. Again, have a look at the links in the description below this video to find links exactly to Rachel's website. Mackenzie Halley, another glass artist who's doing some really interesting work. She's got fantastic long nails. I don't know how she does it, but she makes these wonderful stained glass creations with great big long nails, and she's really good. She posts consistently on lots of topics to do with maintaining your glass grinders, how to solder properly, how to create patterns. She's a really good glass artist tutor on YouTube who is well worth following. And Ed and Barbara Streeter have a fantastic YouTube channel. They started about the same time as I did, and they create YouTube tutorials all about glass cutting, all about copper foil work, how to use a soldering iron, how to use grinders, etc. And they also have a live feed once a week where they're answering questions in real time on social media. Their YouTube channel is called RTRV, and they're a great couple of content creators who are fantastic to get involved with. Check out this video next as you continue your journey in the wonderful world of stained glass.